Welcome to the Scoop on Supplements. Today, we're kicking off a brand new series, one that gets to the root of two of the most common issues we hear from listeners: poor sleep and relentless stress. Here's the thing to be aware of. These two problems aren't separate. They feed each other in a continuous loop, a cycle that, once it gets going, can be incredibly hard to break. In this series, your hosts Taya of Bosmora and Raffaele of 1H Scripts are going to unpack the science, the supplements, and the practical strategies to interrupt that cycle for good. In today's episode, we're setting the stage to walk you through what's actually happening in your body. Raffaele of 1H Scripts and formulates his own line of holistic supplements is going to bring the functional wellness perspective. Together, they'll show you why the sleep-stress cycle might be the most important health conversation you're not having.
Taya, quick question before we start. What time did you go to bed last night?
Honestly, later than I should have. I had a couple things on my mind, and you know how it goes. You lie down, your brain decides it's the perfect time to replay everything that happened in the last week.
Right, and then you wake up tired and you're a little more reactive to stress. The day feels harder than it should. And then the next night, same thing. That's the loop we're talking about today.
Exactly. And what's interesting from a clinical standpoint is that this isn't just anecdotal. The relationship between sleep and stress is deeply physiological. It's bidirectional, it's measurable, and it's something that a huge portion of people are living with without even knowing it's a cycle they can break.
And that's why we build this whole series around it. You stop trying to fix sleep and stress as two separate problems, and you start treating the roots.
Well, let's start with the basics. When we talk about sleep-stress cycle, what we're really talking about is two biological systems that are deeply intertwined. The hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, which most people know as the HPA axis, and our circadian sleep-wake system. The HPA axis is your stress response system. When you perceive a threat, and that threat can be a work deadline just as easily as a predator, your hypothalamus signals your pituitary gland, which signals your adrenal glands to release cortisol. And cortisol is a powerful, necessary hormone, but it's designed for short bursts, not sustained elevation. Now here's where sleep comes in. Cortisol has a natural circadian rhythm. It should be the highest in the morning to get you going and the lowest at night so you can wind down and sleep. When you're chronically stressed, that rhythm gets disrupted. You end up with elevated cortisol at night, which directly impairs your ability to fall asleep and stay in deep sleep.
And from a functional standpoint, what I see is the order direction of the loop. Because when you don't sleep well, your stress threshold drops. You become more reactive. Your nervous system is already running hot. Things that wouldn't have bothered you on a good night's sleep suddenly feel enormous. And this isn't just about feeling tired or grumpy, though that's real. Sleep deprivation actually increases your cortisol output the next day. So you're now starting the day with elevated stress hormones, which makes it even harder to sleep the following night. You can see how this becomes self-reinforcing very quickly. At 1H Scripts, I work with a lot of people on their supplement protocols. And what I find is that the cycle is almost always in the background for the people who feel like nothing is working. They've tried things and seen only marginal results because they're treating symptoms without addressing the loop.
Yeah, that's such an important point, and the research backs it up. The study published in the journal Sleep found that even one night of partial deprivation, not total sleep deprivation, but 4 to 6 hours of sleep, not total sleep deprivation, but only 4 to 6 hours of sleep, significantly increase inflammatory markers and cortisol reactivity the following day. We're not talking about extreme sleep deprivation. We're talking about what most adults with stressful lives are doing routinely.
And the inflammation piece is key because inflammation is its own amplifier in this system. Elevated inflammatory cytokines disrupt sleep quality, reduce slow-wave sleep, and keep the HPA axis in a state of low-grade activation. It's a three-way loop: stress, poor sleep, inflammation, each one feeding the other.
Now let's talk about who this hits the hardest. Because while this cycle can affect anyone at any age, there are some life stages where the biology is working particularly hard against them. For people in their mid-40s through late 50s, you've got a convergence happening. Hormonal shifts, declining estrogen in women, declining testosterone in men, both affect cortisol regulation and sleep architecture independently, and then the life stressors that tend to peak at that stage. career pressure, aging parents, kids in college, financial responsibilities, and you've got the perfect storm.
And for women going through perimenopause, this is often when things really unravel. Hot flash fragments sleep, estrogen decline reduces the buffering effect on stress response, and progesterone, which has a calming, sleep-promoting effect, drops significantly. The cycle becomes almost impossible to ignore at this point. But I want to be clear to our listeners in their 30s and even mid-20s. Unfortunately, they're not off the hook. The patterns that create this cycle often get established earlier. I've worked with people in their late 20s, students, new professionals, where chronic stress and poor sleep habits have already started laying the groundwork.
Completely. And honestly, looking back at pharmacy school, long nights, high pressure, very little actual sleep, I was living this cycle before I even had the language for it. The science makes a lot of personal sense in retrospect. The good news, and this is what this entire series is about, is that the cycle can be interrupted at every age, and there are well-studied, evidence-based tools to do it.
Before we close out today's episode, I want to give our listeners a preview of the supplement landscape we're going to be covering throughout this series, because there's a lot of noise out there, and we want to be upfront about what actually has science behind it. Over the coming episode, we're going to go deep on magnesium specifically for this cycle, different forms for different needs, because not all magnesium is the same, and adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola for the cortisol piece, L-theanine, glycine, 5-HTP, and melatonin. And we're going to talk about the gut-sleep-stress connection, which opens up the world of probiotics and fiber. What you'll find at 1H Scripts is that a lot of these can be combined intelligently into a protocol that actually addresses the cycle rather than just masking symptoms. And we'll walk through exactly how to think about that.
And I'll be adding some context on mechanism, how each of these actually works in the body, the evidence looks like, dosing considerations, and importantly, interactions and contraindications to be aware of. Because some of these supplements can interact with common medications that a lot of people in our audience are likely taking, and that's information you want to take into consideration before you start any supplements. At Bosmora, we formulate with exactly that kind of rigor. Every ingredient has a reason, mechanism, a dose range, grounded in the literature, and a reason it's in the formula rather than something else. That's a standard we're going to hold ourselves to in this series too.
Right, and the most important framing for this whole series, supplements are tools, not shortcuts. If you're sleeping 3 hours and running on cortisol and caffeine, no supplement is going to fully overcome that. We're going to talk about both pieces every episode.
That's it for episode 1 of the sleep stress cycle. Next week, we're going deep on cortisol, your body's double-edged sword, exploring what it actually does, what happens when the system goes wrong, and how adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola can begin to restore balance. And if today's conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who's running on empty. Subscribe to The Scoop on Supplements on Spotify and check out the links in the show notes. Sleep well, we'll talk soon.